Rachael Bischel, thank you so much for joining us today and for contributing to the Women of Strength interview series. You are the program manager for Victoria's Voice, but tell us a little bit about your background, about your story.
So I went to school actually for health science, but my last year in college, I kind of fell into a nonprofit job on accident. It was for low-income housing for families that can't afford to buy a home, but we gave them assistance for a down payment to buy their first home. And that was my first experience with a nonprofit, and I kind of fell in love with that world, that environment, the energy you get from working within a nonprofit. So when I graduated, I moved to Las Vegas and I found Make-A-Wish, and I worked for Make-A-Wish for about 2 years. And then the pandemic hit and, everything that came with that. So it was time to start over then. And then I found Victoria's Voice and fell in love with the organization.
So that means you've been with Victoria's Voice now for what,
2 years.
Oh, is it for 2
2 years,
years?
yes.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about Victoria's Voice.
So Victoria's Voice was started by Dave and Jackie Siegel of Westgate Resort when their daughter Victoria tragically passed away from a drug overdose. She had a lot going on in her life at the time, and Dave and Jackie strongly believe that three things contributed to her death. The first one, she didn't have any life skills. She didn't know how to cope with what it meant to be a teenager going into young adulthood, living on your own. She didn't know how to cope with her depression that led to her drug use. So they kind of missed all those signs.
Right.
And then the second thing was, I said, missing the signs. Them as parents did not know how to communicate, how to bridge that gap, how to reach her, to see what she was going through. When Jackie found Victoria's diary after she passed, she even said, if I had seen this diary, I would have known to step in to help her, how to help her, to understand what was going on, but they just had no idea. And the third thing is that the paramedics, when they arrived, they didn't have naloxone or Narcan on hand. Victoria did have a pulse when they arrived, but sadly she passed on the way to the hospital.
Right.
So they believe if they had Narcan on hand, they would administer it to her, she may have still been able to be with us today.
Right. And so that's been a big push of theirs over the years, is to bring more awareness not only to the drug epidemic that has been a serious issue across our country, but also the access of having naloxone.
Yes.
Not only just in ambulances, in the medical field, in schools, but also how prevalent it is to have access to it in our homes and in our vehicles, in just the first aid kits.
Absolutely. And so many people don't even know what naloxone is. I did not know when I started the foundation, and I found out there is an antidote to a drug overdose for opioids that's out there and available. So our mission is to make it accessible to everyone for free.
Right.
It should be free. A simple drug that can save someone's life who's overdosing. It can even be someone who didn't know they were going to overdose. Their intent was not to overdose when they took a drug that had fentanyl or something else laced within it.
Absolutely.
So they should have that chance to come back again and realize what happened.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the biggest misconception, is that you don't have to have naloxone in your home because you or someone you know is maybe struggling with addiction.
Right.
This is something that a lot of just regular medications are being laced with it, where a lot of even teenagers can buy bootleg medication over the internet, and they're taking it maybe for a migraine, and they don't know that it's laced with fentanyl, and it is killing people. So just to even have, I think it's 2 milligrams, like 2 grains of sand
of
fentanyl is 50 times more powerful than heroin.
Yes.
Which is mind-boggling. I mean, even to consider even just residue of it and having your children, maybe if it's on the playground or something, that is how easy it is for someone to be affected and impacted by this.
Yeah.
So having naloxone is a big deal. And I know when we first heard of Victoria's Voice and we were more educated on ourselves, immediately my husband, he got naloxone. So we have it here in our home. We have it downstairs, upstairs, and in our vehicle first aid kits.
And when I meet parents, I talk to them, they even say like, oh, like my kids aren't drug addicts. I don't know any drug addict. And it's like, they don't have to be.
Nope.
It could be your child's friend that comes over and they have an overdose.
Yeah.
Or your child thinking that they're taking a Percocet or an Adderall that they got from someone else.
Right.
It's just a Percocet and Adderall.
100%.
And it is not. It's laced with fentanyl.
And I believe what I've heard is that on the death certificates, they are labeling those deaths as not overdose.
Drug poisoning.
Drug poisoning, yes. which is crazy to think. For anyone who isn't aware of what Narcan or what naloxone looks like, here is a box that we have in our home, and this is a nasal spray. There's different brands and ways to administer, but the nasal spray is maybe the most easiest and convenient way to administer that to somebody who is actively in the process of having an overdose. And the good news about it is that if someone isn't actually overdosing and this is administered, it doesn't have harmful effects on the person, which is great news.
Yes, it's safe. So if you were to do it right now, you would have no effect to yourself.
So that's what it looks like.
So the reason why I believe it's so important, Victoria's Voice believes it's so important to have Narcan, is that 50% of overdose occur in someone's home. And 60% of those overdoses occur in the presence of someone else. So you're with someone and have that Narcan in hand, that other person is able to administer that.
What a difference that would make. How many people, when you consider, are active users, and like you said, they're doing it with somebody. And if something like this was as popular a product in a household first aid kit or even a vehicle first aid kit, you would immediately know if something was going down. Let's go get the Narcan. Let's go get naloxone. But how many people's lives have passed away because it just wasn't even in their thoughts. It wasn't something they had access to.
Yeah.
So important.
Very.
National Naloxone Awareness Day is on June 6th.
June 6th is the anniversary of Victoria's death, which is why we have this big movement for National Naloxone Awareness Day. It is so important to us. Last year in New York City, we did an event on that day, and that day was deemed National Naloxone Awareness Day in New York. And just recently in Florida, the same thing happened. They passed law, and it is now Naloxone National Awareness Day in Florida. And so this year we're doing a big push for it. We were trying to get into every major media outlet, every city across the country to make this so well known. We want naloxone to be a household name.
Right.
And the reason behind that is that the amount of drug overdoses, drug poisonings happening are just startling. For example, children 14 and younger are the fastest growing demographic of overdoses or drug poisoning happening in our country today.
Wow.
Last year, over 120,000 Americans died from a drug overdose. And that number is growing rapidly every single year.
Right.
So if we can just save one life at a time, get those numbers to come down, the work we're doing will all be worth it.
So some of the ways that people can help spread the awareness is through their social media, word of mouth, of course, and just knowing and educating yourself on what's going on and how drastic it is and the importance of having awareness and being educated on everything. Yeah, absolutely. Vital signs. Tell us a little bit about vital signs.
Yeah, so vital signs was created from Dave and Jackie admitting that they missed the signs of what Victoria was going through. So we didn't want other parents to have to go through that. So we created a course called Vital Signs. It is for parents, educators. Even if you're not a parent, it's a great resource for you to have. It is a course you can take online, completely free. It just walks through different steps, different signs you go through. It talks about drug addiction, talks about alcohol, vaping, use, sexual behavior, suicide tendencies, all of those things that parents should know about. Has resources for them, and it's just a great series to take and just know what's going on in kids' lives. It gives you segue conversations, how to approach them about certain things.
Right.
Even if your kid isn't a drug user, it's still a great conversation to have with them about the dangers of what's out there, even in marijuana and vaping, things that kids, teenagers are like, that's just a normal thing. Everyone's doing it. But the difference is that the marijuana from 20, 30 years ago, not what it is today.
It's a totally different experience, totally different world that we're living in today. Completely agree with that. And access to Vital Signs is through the Victoria's Voice Foundation website.
Yes.
For access to the Vital Signs program, you can go to Victoria's Voice Foundation's website. For anyone who's interested in looking into and reading Victoria's Voice, this is a copy of her diary that her parents did publish. You can see clearly through just having access to her mind and what was going through it in her diary entries. And there's some statistics also in the book that her parents included. It's amazing, and it's an incredible tool for parents to be able to have better insight into what it looks like to maybe be going through a mental health battle, as well as somebody who's also maybe struggling with addiction as well.
Yeah, I agree. This book is amazing. We share it with our students when we go out to speak at their schools. Michael De Leon, our director of youth outreach, travels across the country every day. He's in a different state, different city, talking to students about his own journey as well as Victoria. And he hands his diaries out, and kids are moved. They go home, they read it, they come back the next day, they say how amazing it was. Just to have a peer that's their age, that's going through something similar, have that understanding. They can read her writing and see the struggle she was going through and really understand what it means to go through something like that. The book includes resources in the back for parents or teachers or anyone interested about marijuana, fentanyl, vaping, other drugs, as well as some of the things that we included in Vital Signs. So it's a great resource.
And where can people purchase this book?
You can purchase it on Amazon. Best ways to get involved with Victoria's Voice are through advocacy. So that's word of mouth, telling people about Victoria's story, why it's important to have naloxone in your home. Even policy change, going to your local leaders and talking about why naloxone should be free and accessible in your area and around the country. Even if there's any policies that are red tape to getting these overdose deaths down, whether that's law enforcement doesn't have the budget for naloxone, which they should always have that budget for naloxone. And that goes into our Get, Give, Save movement. So we started a Get, Give, Save movement, which is get naloxone, give naloxone, save a life. So that's why everyone should have naloxone to potentially save someone's life.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rachael, for coming today and for sharing this important information that I think is a huge impact in not only the local community, the statewide, but nationally. This is a nationwide issue. This is a worldwide issue. And I think the more that we are educated and aware, and we just, like you said, share word of mouth and do what we can to make a difference in this area, will have a huge benefit. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.